So welcome, Joanna. So today we've got Joanna Kostka, who is a lecturer in social work here at Lancaster University. Joanna currently teaches on contemporary social problems in social work, is very well published and works collaboratively on a number of projects. And hopefully she'll tell us a little bit more about that. So welcome. It's nice to meet you today.
Oh, welcome, Louise. Very excited to be here. I'm a big fan of the library and a big geek, so...
And that's what we're going to explore today, so that's perfect. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to everyone?
So I'm a lecturer in social work. I've been here at Lancaster for 8 years. I work with mainly with first-year students, which is quite exciting and also quite a lot of hard work, but we can talk about that later on. I do research on inequalities and I work with marginalized groups and community groups. At this time I work mainly with Roma minorities, people who came here from Eastern Europe, but I also interested very much in issues of poverty and how we tackle poverty and how we tackle exclusion and marginalization, including digital marginalization as well. So that is my sort of area of interest.
I think that digital marginalisation, I don't think people realise how big of a thing that actually is.
Definitely, we're taking it for granted that internet is everywhere, everybody has access, which is empirical research shows that it's just simply not true. There are entire communities that don't have access, and even if they do have access, they're not using it very much to benefit themselves. It's more of a sort of a tool to communicate, to watch, to scroll through things. But when it comes to that sort of information literacy that we're going to talk about today, that is still there's quite limited knowledge about these issues across different demographics.
And this is going to go seamlessly in because actually people feel that they are very internet worthy and they can use it and they can find things. But actually, as a librarian teaching information literacy, we know that you use the internet differently. So, it's quite interesting and it's very seamlessly into our first question. So, how do you currently support students in developing their research and information literacy skills?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I can talk about this. And before I start, I have to say that supporting students in developing these skills is definitely a team sport. And I'm sort of blessed because in social work, teamwork is sort of our second nature. So we work together collaboratively to create a community that is very open, accessible, where students sort of feel comfortable asking questions and exploring different resources and different alleys through which they can learn and absorb knowledge. And of course, the amount of knowledge and information that's out there is very, very overwhelming. Not just to them, but to us in many ways. Yeah. So we try to really encourage students to take it slowly. We break things down. We're not expecting anybody to, conduct a groundbreaking research in their first year. At the same time, we don't take ourselves that seriously all the time. Yeah. It's about fun. It's about experimenting. It's about getting out there and seeking different sources of knowledge. And I think our collective approach to this that we have in our team really helps us reach students because they are, they come to this new environment, often from far away, from areas where they haven't been socialized to use internet in a certain ways. So it's really good when they see a team rather than sort of this individualistic approach, and they feel a little bit more comfortable to ask questions. Of course, it doesn't take time immediately. Students take their time to open up and share, and it is hard work, but it's definitely worth bringing this to them from the very first day. Because I think we have to remember, and we forget sometimes, that I think this is the first generation in human history with such excessive and extensive access to information. this level of access has challenges, and we see these challenges everywhere. Fake news, social media, what's true, what's not true, and our politicians are not really leading the way in how to properly discern good sources. So students sort of find themselves in this sea of data, and they find it very problematic to see what's credible or what's not. Because I also think that, especially in social sciences, there's an incredible level of complexity. There is not always the right or wrong answer. And I find that students tend to be overwhelmed with these layers and layers of ambiguity, and they're not well prepared often. I don't think our secondary education prepares students to deal with this sort of complexity, and they're almost traumatized as they want that right answer after going through all these standardized tests and multiple choice. I have so many students coming and said, what do you want me to find? Yes. What is the right answer? So, and we wrongly assume, and I think you said that in the beginning, that young people are really savvy with technology and surfing the internet, and there definitely are, but they're more of a communicators, and they know how to express themselves on Snapchats, on Instagram, but when it comes to filtering information, they really don't know how to do it. And this is where we come in.
Yeah.
We're sort of like a GPS in the academic jungle of knowledge that we sort of try to break that system down and try to help them sort of avoid these dead-end Google rabbit holes and trying to show them very, very practically what it means to be true-ish, what it means to be credible, what it means to have evidence, how to express yourself using evidence. So on one hand, it's quite challenging, but it's also really, really rewarding to see how they grow and how they sort of start. It all makes sense at like year 2. It starts all come together.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel it is such a rewarding role that we have in people's lives. There's a big impact, isn't there, in what we do, but also it's about the critical thinking, and I think that's kind of a bit what you was alluding to then. In the secondary education, it's not as encouraged as it is. So yeah, it is a different way of thinking. It's a different way of learning when they come to university, and like you say, it can be traumatic. It feels sometimes that they're thrown in at the deep end, and we're expecting a lot from them. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying there. So with your students, what are the biggest challenges do you think they're facing when they're conducting the research? I see lots and lots of different students, and I could answer this in so many different ways. So I'm interested to see how you.
Well, honestly, I think one of the biggest challenge for students is the information overload. There's just too much of everything. And you have grey literature, you have academic sources, you have films, you have podcasts. So they really are hit with a flood of sources and often conflicting viewpoints. And they sort of almost like they stir in this academic abyss and almost are paralyzed because they don't know where to go. And so, and again, this sort of idea that you need to have the right answer, and what if I'm wrong? What I always tell students, there's no wrong answer, and they're petrified. They're just like, well, why are we learning this stuff? I'm like, well, sometimes you have to find an answer for yourself, and you have to position yourself and have a different view, and all it matters is that you have evidence to prove, and our job is to find this evidence. And so that's our starting point. How do you find these evidence? And you're right, like teaching young people information literacy is really difficult to make it thrilling. It's like, welcome, how to reference, you need that and dot here. So I do work really hard to sort of try to destigmatize the geekiness of the library skills. And to show students that library isn't just, for bookworms or some dusty place where you go to sit in quiet, but it's actually a progressive, vibrant space, essential space where you can find real-world tools that, take you way beyond university life. So I think like the challenge is to make them see that these skills that we teach them the skills we teach them in first year is not just to write an assignment or write an essay, but these are actual practical skills. And I think the challenge is to make research relatable.
Yes.
It's not just an abstract exercise where I sort of shine my knowledge and show my students how brilliant my thinking is. That does not work. You have to show them that what we are teaching them is a tool, and make it relatable to their own experiences. Like I, for example, teach sample bias by giving examples from Tinder. You know, when you like swipe right,
Yes.
you will only see a certain type of individuals. And we play games and we discuss how to improve our searches for the perfect mate. So it sort of takes that pompous academic seriousness out of the exercise, and that's how they engage more. They feel more comfortable to engage, and I think it's such an important thing, because I think for people who've been in academia all their lives or spent in academia a very long time, like we forget just how unintuitive these searches are sometimes. Yes. How to get to certain data, how to extract information. So we take it for granted that we know this stuff, and we expect other people to do as well, which is actually counterproductive. It's just forcing students to start thinking in ways that they're not prepared to think, and then we lose them.
Yes.
And then they hear the word research. It's like, no, I'm not a researcher, I'm a practitioner.
Yeah. And I think as well, certainly in your line of, your field of research or profession, a lot of the time people do say that, don't they? I'm not a researcher, but actually we need that research to be able to progress the profession and progress what we can offer. So, that research still needs to be there, and it needs people like you and our students to be doing that research.
Well, I actually think it's such a white lie to say that research is for academics and that only educated people are doing research. It's bogus. We all do research all the time in our lives. Whether you're buying a soap, or you picking a right dentist, or you trying to find a new model of working with children. We're all constantly researching and learning and collecting data and analyzing data. So it's an everyday exercise for most people in this world. It sort of got, almost stolen by academics. It's like, we're the only people with our jargon, with our very fancy words. So I think in our line of work, in social work, we have to keep that balance. On one hand, yes, we need to have models and concepts and deep theoretical thinking, but we also have to always apply this to practice and show to students that research sometimes it's a matter of life and death. It's, it can prevent violence, it can cause violence. And I think the moment young people, get that into their way of thinking, that I'm not just writing essays and presenting papers, but I'm actually conducting research that can help my communities and my path of work. You literally see like sparks in their eyes.
Yeah, it's the angle, isn't it? It's the angle that you address it, and I completely agree. And I actually really like when you said I use Tinder, and that's your example. I used to use the Apple phone. You're gonna be buying an Apple phone. What is it that you want? How many gigs do you want? How much data do you want? And you filter in your results by your requirements, and searching is exactly the same. So using that day to day is just making it relatable, and it's taking away the stigma, I think, or not even the stigma, but maybe the fear.
The fear. I think a lot of people feel I'm not smart enough. I don't know data. What is data? It's just information. It's just information. It's just pieces of information. It's little puzzles that you need. So even changing vocabulary a little bit to reach people. A lot of people come, we have students that come from different backgrounds. A lot of them are not socialized into this vocabulary of research, and some of them are, first in their families that come to university, and, it takes them a while to feel comfortable and like they belong. So just, playing around with words and examples and real life examples is really important. And I also think that we need to, I think academics in general need to learn more from our students. We really need to be humble, and we really need to listen. And I know it's difficult because sometimes they don't say anything.
Yes, yes, sometimes they don't say
like,
anything.
tell me what it is that you want.
Yes.
It's like silence. But that's also one of the symptoms of fear, of not feeling confident, of not feeling like you belong or you're smart enough to contribute. But the moment you open these spaces, I think in social work we're really good at doing that, at creating this collective environments which like tell us what it is, not in form of complaint or evaluation, but how, what we can do together differently that benefits all of us. And I think that works very well. And not a lot of people want to do it, just it takes time and it takes effort. But I think once you institutionalize that in your program, once you have that as an ethos of your program, then it's much easier. I mean, we benefit from the fact that we have a small program. So we work with a small group of students. It's more intimate, more sort of community oriented. But I think that even with bigger groups, that is still possible to do.
Yeah, but you're building that relationship, aren't you? You're building that trust where they feel that actually I can give you that feedback, perhaps, and I can say, I'm having trouble with this, perhaps, or, oh, I really liked that, but it didn't quite hit the mark. And you're making that relationship so that you're making the communication open, so hopefully your students are feeling the benefit of that. Do you think?
I think so. I think students like when you are sort of genuine and authentic.
Yes.
They young people have like an instinct when they smell bullshit.
Yes.
Right away. And they don't react well to the sort of pompous, very complex things because, they're young and free and they want maybe quick answers to very complex questions. But there's a lot of enthusiasm that comes with that. And, we should thrive on this enthusiasm and use it as, all right, so you don't agree with me. Well, how would you prove that? Where would you look for information? A newspaper article is something that you would use as evidence. And, sometimes, on days that I'm not so enthusiastic, I'm like, wow, this is all like useless. I don't understand. No one says anything. And then I ask questions and they come up with such great responses. So there's, the seeds are planted.
Yeah.
And I see, you come to library, it's not like it's empty, right?
Oh, no, it's definitely not empty.
People come here, people use the space is comfortable, I keep emphasizing that it's for them, that this is maybe not a privilege, but it is in many ways. You have this space where everything that's here you can use and learn from, and I think that it's about building communities. I'm like all into building communities.
It is about building communities, and I think you touched on something slightly then where information overload, but not just information overload. The quick answer.
Yes.
We're so used to having everything at our fingertips these days and just putting something in a search engine and getting a quick answer, that actually when you have to start critically thinking or really digging, then it takes that bit more effort. And sometimes I wonder if that puts students off a little as well, because it's not, same as you say, it's not always a yes or no answer. It's not always a right or wrong answer. And we have to investigate a little bit more, where actually we're just used to looking at the top 10 of our search engine and going, that's enough.
Yeah.
So it's just, so that takes us into the next question. Is that okay?
Okay, yes,
okay.
Of course.
So as a department, as a team, time is an issue that we face constantly from academics who've not got enough time to maybe embed us in the programmes, their modules. Do you have any recommendations, any thoughts on how, as a team, a department, that we can address these time constraints? How can we maybe overcome them so that we're, seeing students and working with faculties?
Definitely time constraints are an issue across all institutions, I think, at the moment. We all struggle for time, our most valuable resource. And it's not, I think we have to be very creative. And that's not to say that we should just be used and do more with less all the time. But I think if we're being creative The idea of research and literacy skills, information literacy skills, are all about, being integrated into everything that we do. So I don't envision an extra module just on how to do searches. I implement these searches and these ideas into everything I do. In every lecture, even if I lecture about big concepts, I always ask students, okay, where would we find this? What's the best resource? What the source that you need that we can use. So, this sort of approach of micro-learning opportunities,
Yes.
rather than big blocks, extra room, extra time, after hours, have these micro-learning opportunities in the curriculum, short, focused tutorials that cover, for example, just one skill. So we've just done seminars where we talked about different sources. What's an academic journal, how it looks when it's printed, what's the difference between electronic journal and the actual printed paper. And it might seem overly basic, but it's necessary. Like, we need to meet students where they are, not where we want them to be. Mm-hmm. And, I don't think I knew what an academic journal was in first year, and I was a big geeky, super well-read kid, and I still didn't have that vocabulary. So, we don't need to, especially in first year, create these big tutorials that take a lot of time, effort, resources, but we have to be very creative in how we incorporate that. And you guys are doing great jobs with all the online material that I incorporate in all my Moodle, and I emphasize how important it is to look at it. And sometimes we look at it together, because I know that after, in their independent learning times, that's often not a priority. I also like to have these sort of, and I call them research snack breaks.
Like this idea.
My partner says, you're such a geek.
No, I like this idea.
But it's, okay, we're talking about big ideas of unemployment. Okay, how do we measure unemployment? And then we sort of switch from big concept and try to find out. And they get really, when they actually know what to do and where to look, they get very excited. It's like, I didn't know that the number is so high, how would you get that? Why is someone else having a different number? And then we go back to the lecture. So it doesn't, it may take time to set it up, sort of conceptually in my head, so I don't lose track of things. But once it's set up, it works extremely well. I used to have Paul Newman coming in, and those sessions were really great, especially for second year students who are a little bit more savvy about how to use sources. So again, that was part of my module. That wasn't a separate thing. But I actually think we have to, I know maybe it's controversial and my colleagues won't agree, but I really do think that we can't expect students to know this stuff.
No, definitely.
A lot of the time we do. And then once we realize that they don't, we're like, you need to go on training and learn all this stuff separately. Mm-hmm. The moment you make it separate from your curriculum, you lose them. Yeah. Because it's something I have to do to write my assignment, or this is separate. Research and practice are separate, or this concept and research are separate. So you always have to keep it together and work on that level.
Yeah, it's about joining the dots, isn't it? And not making one more important than the other.
Absolutely.
But also about habit forming. That's what it sounds like that you're saying. Actually, if you look at the subject guide, for example, which has got all the resources on there, then you will do that next time, and then you'll do that next time, and it'll just become the habit. You'll come. Don't get me wrong. There's always a space for search engines. There always is. But you will lean more towards the resources, the academic resources, and it sounds like that you put that in place and just keep reinforcing it.
Oh, absolutely. You said it. It's a habit. Yeah. And once it becomes a habit, you do it automatically. It's like, I have to check this. I have to, So the moment you work this as a habit and you tell them that this is part of human existence, it's not just part of your assignment, that's the only way to go. And I do think, like, if you look at professionals, whether they're social workers or criminologists or lawyers, I mean, who flourished? people who actually know how to access information.
Yeah.
People who know where to look, who to ask, who to call. These are the people who are actually, living sort of maybe slightly better lives. Because it's not just about personal growth, but it's also about functioning in a system that is overly bureaucratic and it is overly complex and based on constantly finding and dealing and sifting through information.
But they do say, don't they, knowledge is power, and proof is in the pudding and all of that. So we talked a little bit about you encouraging students to come to the library or just use they don't even have to come to the library. We've got all of these online resources that you've alluded to. So they don't actually have to come and set foot in the library if they don't want to. We're aware that library anxiety is a real thing for a lot of people. So I'm just wondering, have you got any suggestions, any kind of strategies on how to motivate students to engage with our services?
Yeah, I think you have to take it slowly. You can't be like, I'm sometimes overexcited. It's like, library is the best place. And then, I just see like glazed eyes looking at me. But you do have to sort of, again, make it relatable to their everyday lives. And from the start, they need to know that the library is their best friend. It's for them. Sometimes it takes time to get over the anxiety, especially if you come from backgrounds where going to library was not celebrated or wasn't even known as an activity. And, it didn't help that in the last 20 years, we cut so much funding from public libraries, which I still think is the most valuable public resource out there. And again, we have to meet students where they are. I will repeat this. We need to meet them where they are, not where we want them to be. We're not necessarily working with like formed Shakespeare's and Einsteins. We're working with people who are learning, who are eager to learn, but they may not know how to, start, especially after, writing tests and exams. And it's also not about dumbing things down. It's not about that. It's about breaking things down so they can feel they can access this space. That's to build their confidence. I bring my students to the library. We come for little trips to the library, really, and they have to find a book, and we play a game. And it might sound like this is primary school, but it's fun, and we learn and we bond, and we talk about it, and then the space becomes just another space. Not this like the system of books, codes, and it's so alien that I don't want to show anybody that I don't know how to use it. So I think just this sort of promoting as this space as a common space, as a public good that we all use, we all share, we can all benefit. It's great. All your online resources are doing a great job because they're accessible. They're 24 hours. They're there. So I think, we're working with a generation who's an internet generation. Yes. This is the generations that never remember days where you had to look through paper and then go to a librarian and ask for a book that, wait 4 months for it to arrive from Australia and it's a wrong book. So they don't remember that. And in their imagination, it's really difficult to imagine. So this online resources for them is probably the best thing that we can offer, and that doesn't mean it just takes over and we don't have any personal interaction. That's not what I'm saying. But it's really, really important that these things that are there and are accessible, and for people from different backgrounds and different language skills and whatnot. And on sort of practical notes, I think it's really important to emphasize that it's not for the assignment, that these are tools for students that they will use in their career. I mean, in social work, we have sort of easy career trajectories because most of our students overwhelmingly choose to be social workers. So we can really, bring practitioners in, bring service users in, and they talk about how important it is to know things, to research things. Like if you're working with, someone with, who's neurodiverse, you really need to do a little bit of research. It's on you. You're the professional. You have the obligation to find this stuff out. And when students hear that, from people from outside of academia, they're like, Just sometimes when you say research, they're like, no, I'm going to do practice. It's like, it's like the separation.
Yeah.
And I blame academia for it as well, in parts. So we can be blamed for everything, but sort of the separate, like we're doers or we're thinkers, or it's such an artificial divide, and so not conducive to what we need now in our lives, because we need doers who think.
And we've spoken about it just before we came on, previously, before we started recording, before we came on. Just sounded a bit fancy that then, so I was like, I've never heard this. But we spoke about it, didn't we, about how students have changed, but how life's changed and how we learn has changed. So actually, to show that everything is together and it's no longer separated, because at one time it was separated, but actually to show now that it is necessary for you to be able to do your role. You are going to have to do that background reading. You are going to have to do that little bit of research. You are going to have to know that framework or whatever. For that to be reinforced, it can only be a good thing, and it's only something that they'll be able to take into their profession and make them better at it, surely.
Oh, absolutely. I totally believe that, if you're a mechanic and you have a good conceptual understanding how the car works, you're just a better mechanic.
Yes.
Because you have that holistic view. You may not know how to fix the problem, but you can think creatively and research. And like my partner spends hours watching YouTube videos on how to screw something on. And, that's research. Yeah, he's like, well, I'm just watching. I'm like, no, you're researching. Yes. You're doing research. So... You're right. Knowledge sort of is spilling out of universities now. And I think that's a good thing. This sort of gatekeeping of knowledge, has been problematic for centuries. Like women were excluded, ethnic minorities were excluded from, and their knowledge was not included. So now we have an opportunity to not only spill our knowledge, but also take other knowledge into the institution. And I think that's what's brilliant about research and library and technology that allows us to share. Just a few years ago, it was like impossible to talk to someone from Australia. Yeah. And now, we have Teams, we can access their writings, we can access their little film they made, and we share that knowledge. And I think for students, that's very exciting because they do that all the time. They just share their personal things. But we had a really lovely session in one of the social work modules about, this idea of organic intellectual, someone who doesn't just hoard knowledge, but learns things and then shares the knowledge with the community. And they love that.
Yeah. I love that. I do. I just love
it. What I'm telling you, it's not that just for you and your personal growth. Great if it is, but your job is to take that knowledge, maybe do a little bit more research on it and sell it or give it to your community to improve things, to change things, to be entertaining, to win a quiz pub, whatever it is. But it's this sort of sharing of knowledge that's I actually, I'm a big believer in young people. I always say that young people bring that air of positivity, and even if they're sort of like laid back and maybe not always engaged, but they're engaged in different ways, I believe. But this type of sharing knowledge with everyone around you is such a powerful idea.
And both of our professions, even though they're very different, it's about sharing the knowledge. Yes. And we have to keep on top of whatever new legislation comes out or whatever new AI guidance comes, we have to keep on top of that. And so the learning is always there, but the sharing is always there as well. Yes. Or I feel it is. I read somewhere, and I can't quite remember the date, something like if you was born before whatever, then you're older than Google. And I thought, oh God, I'm older than Google.
Yeah, me too.
Same as you say, this generation is not older than Google, a lot of them, So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on using technology to deliver the library sessions. So post-COVID, Teams is very much used much more frequently than it ever has been before, or Zoom or other platforms. So what do you think about using these kind of tools to deliver those sessions?
I think they're brilliant. I used to be the biggest technology phobe, like I was like, oh, technology, no. Like, I didn't have a phone. I was like the last person to get a smartphone. And now I'm like 100% opposite. I really embrace technology because I really see the positive sides. I mean, there's plenty of dangers and plenty of negatives, but that's with every tool we have in our lives. So, but I think that the very idea of Teams and how we use it now, it's become so normalized, and it brings access, it gives flexibility, it brings students in who would otherwise not be able to join for whatever reason, whether it's money issues or disability issues. So I really think Teams and these kind of platforms are absolutely great. As I said, all your online material is great because it allows flexibility. It's there. It sort of offers almost security that if I forget, I can look and someone will tell me, and it's always there. It's like having a librarian on call all the time, which is freaking awesome. And it doesn't mean that these technologies replace our face-to-face. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. I think a little bit of both is needed. And I think our job is to just make sure all these platforms are accessible, because we did talk about digital poverty and people who are being excluded. And we saw during COVID that all of a sudden a lot of students did not have a space to attend lectures, share the computer with their younger siblings. So it's our job to just keep thinking of how to make it more accessible and more universal and egalitarian and also ethical. And so that's a lot of work, and I think a lot of scholars, certainly in social work, we do a lot of thinking about these sort of online tools. Artificial intelligence is coming in, and it can create such great opportunities, but it comes with a bag of big problems and questions and insecurities. But again, we cannot stop the clock. Technology is here, and it's evolving, and it's driving everything. So we need to do our best to harness it for our own benefit.
Yeah, I agree. And briefly, you was talking about years ago when we had the little cards and we did the print format. But we've moved on since then. But that doesn't mean that we can't use everything together. We just move on. Technology moves on, and we move on with it. We're flexible enough to move on with it. And hopefully, in years to come, I don't think face-to-face will ever, hopefully, disappear completely.
No, I'm just afraid that it might become like a resource for the rich, where the rich have the luxury to be, one-on-one, and everybody else is stuck on Teams. But I hope that won't happen. That's a very dystopian future. And again, we still have agency to direct this technology and to work with technology. So, you read a lot of sort of dark scenarios that, the robots will take over, and that's very difficult to predict. But we can't forget that we have agency to really navigate these systems. And the worst thing is when you have this apathy that or you're not engaging with it at all. I mean, I taught my mother, who I remember she couldn't turn the VCR on for like most of her life. And now she's like sending me, little videos of how to make cheesecake and, little, smiley faces. And, she's in her late 70s and she's really comfortable with technology now, because I keep telling her, you have to keep on learning. You can't just say it doesn't affect you, it's not for you. You need to learn, you need to embrace technology in your life.
But it's opened up such a world, and it does. And as I said earlier, search engines have got a space, and I think TikTok's got a space, and I think everything's got a space. It's how it's used.
Absolutely. I mean, TikTok. I haven't been on TikTok for a very long time because that's not sort of how I spend my time. But now I work with young people, so I start watching it. And yes, there's a lot of really, really weird, nonsensical things, in my opinion. But I also start thinking, like, how amazing that there's so many people who have this need to express themselves and to sort of show a part of themselves, whether through dance or cooking or, it just shows such creative aspect of human nature. And these technologies, if used wisely, can actually really make people, fulfill people's needs. But again, we need to teach young people. I wish we could teach young people like from the grade one. how to use technology, what's important about technology, what's dangerous about technology. But hopefully, this is becoming a norm to sort of incorporate this type of teaching throughout the entire education.
Yeah, hopefully, especially as technology is moving on. And, you know, sometimes, you know, TikTok can actually spark something and people will go and hopefully look at, you know, more credible resources. But, it, you know, it does maybe just give them a little bit of thought, a bit of food for thought. So again, it's not, I don't think anything should be absolutely don't use it. And if you are going to use it wisely, as we've said. And then, you know, the library's got lots and lots of resources that are available 24/7. You know, they're all online. This has been great.
I know, we could go forever.
Keep going forever.
So no, we can only do 10 minutes.
So thank you very much, Joanna. It's been really, really interesting. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome.